This is Becoming Inclusive from the Kaleidoscope Group, where we're thinking differently about diversity, equity, and inclusion for more empowered people at work. We're committed to real change, and that begins with real conversations. Welcome in.
I'm Reggie Ponder, and welcome to another edition of Becoming Inclusive. Here we talk about how do you do it as opposed to it's just a destination. And we always have someone interesting to talk to. But before we do that, my co-host here is Catherine Potts. Hey, Kat, how are you doing this morning?
Hey, everyone. Doing good. Happy to be back as usual.
Well, you say you're happy to be back. I mean, anybody coming off vacation can't be happy to be back. But
that's true. I'm still mentally on vacation, but here physically.
but we're really happy to have you. And today we have Aarin in the house. And Aarin, you, Kat, and myself, we've had so many discussions offline. And one of the things that we want to talk about today, it's actually spurred from some of the stuff that you've been talking about, is really, is there a commitment? Is there authenticity? Is there a real drive for diversity, or is a lot of this stuff kind of talking heads? Is a lot of this stuff checking a box because you have to? Boss says, hey, we got to do this, we got to do that. But how do we determine the authenticity of the effort, the authenticity of the person? But before I do that, before we actually get into all that, really want you to talk about what you do in your role, and then we'll get into this discussion.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me for this discussion. Happy to be here. I am a client service manager, meaning that, I really help direct the life of a project, make sure that the engagement is going along the tracks that have been planned out from the scope of work. So, making sure that everything is aligned on the objectives that have been set out, making sure that the budget is being utilized properly, making sure that all lines of communication are open, regarding, all of the different segments of work that are involved, and really just making sure that the project is going the way that it should. So, I have my hands in a lot of different, projects, a lot of different, really a lot of different industries and a lot of different types of organizations, that are stepping into this work still in 2022. I think maybe some thought that things would taper down some, after 2020 and how explosive things were then. We still see an uptick of individuals from organizations that want to do the work, that want to engage in the work and take part of the journey. And so it's interesting to see, along with that role, also being a facilitator, meaning that, I facilitate, education, dialogues, whether it be moderating focus groups or delivering educational content, to see where people are, on the spectrum of the journey. And so it's a broad range of commitment that people have to it, when you're talking about, especially when you're talking about leadership, because that's really where it starts from the top to really, model that commitment, to show, your team that, this is something that is being taken seriously.
So I want to jump in here because you said a lot of things here. The first that I want to do is, because we are going to talk about leadership and this authenticity, but you talked about that a lot of companies are stepping into this work, and I think in talking about this just a little bit, it'll actually lead us to, are they stepping into this work authentically? And so as you see companies stepping into this work, is it is
it reactive or is it proactive?
See, that's why I have a co-host. So thanks, Pat.
There you go. Yeah, it's there to make you look good. No, that's a great question. I think it has shifted. I have to say that I'm new to this work, but I'm not new to relating to people and hearing where people are kind of coming from in terms of whether they're even aware of what DEI is and how it's implemented. But it seems like there's been a shift from being extremely reactive, there being some sort of incident or being some sort of need for, hey, let's, we got a fire here, like, let's put this out so that, we can go back to business as usual, whether it be sensitivity trainings or, some sort of, moderation between, parties that have experienced like a severance in some way that's impacting those around them. And I think it's shifted from that to a form of proactiveness.
When you say that, obviously that's very, very encouraging when people are looking to be proactive. When we look at what happened with George Floyd, we saw a lot of people saying, okay, I got to do something. And,
right.
And some of those people or corporations seemed to not necessarily be proactive, but reactive. And reactive in that something happened in the world, maybe proactive in that nothing was specifically happening at their company. But the question was, are you doing this? Are you getting into the work with the impact in mind or the individual issue?
And I just want to chime in too really quick. I think there's probably two groups, right? And Aaron, we'll see what you think about what I'm about to say as well. But there's probably a group of people that are just reacting and being proactive because they want to avoid, things that occurred, like the George Floyd incident really inspired people, right? But I have to also argue that there's probably people that maybe that's what it took, right? For them to be like, okay, we do need to get ahead of it. So I think there's probably two groups, and we can't give too hard of a time to the groups generally, because if that's what it took for some people to wake up, then that's still people being motivated and hopefully inspired to change. But again, to your point, Reggie, I do think there probably are some people now that are just, being reactive. It's still in the reactive group, right? Even though it may seem proactive.
Because Aaron, what I've seen firstly, Kat, that's a really great point to talk about. If it took you to get there, does it really matter? I think the thing that we're looking at is that if it took you to get there, we're happy that you're there. Now, what is that authentic journey? What is that commitment to what you're saying that you're going to do? So we've heard a lot of companies coming out with declarations and saying, hey, we support and we do that, but nothing internal, nothing external really seems to have happened. Now, you never ever totally in those companies, so that could be judgmental, but the actions didn't really seem to change with the public. And Aaron, I think we've talked a little bit about that.
Yeah. And I think you're hitting on something that I think is important with the internal versus the external component, because, I think that shift takes into account that, there was no external pressure before for this work to direct a focus on, how equitable your practices are, or, like how diverse are your recruiting processes. Those weren't things that were looked upon on companies from an external standpoint, so their reaction previously came from internal issues that arose. So now where I think the shift to proactivity comes from, well, before I get called out for not doing these things, let me get out in front of it. And so, with that, I think comes, there's always going to be nuance to decisions like that, because you can go about that with intentionality. You can go about that authentically and say, well, let's create a plan. Let's create a roadmap, with an end in mind, knowing that it's a continuous process, but knowing that we have goals that we're trying to reach. And so we might want to say, we're checking a box along the way on these goals that we're trying to meet in order to get to a place where we should be at, But then on the other end, you can also say, well, let me get out in front of this because I don't want to be called out as being racist.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to be called out as being a racist organization. I don't want to deal with what goes along with that. So let me get with a company, so we can align ourselves with a partner from the outside. It looks like we're doing what we need to do and our bases are covered. It's about that mindset that you take in with that proactivity,
And too, it's sort of what I hear you saying though, is there's still kind of like potential danger, right? Because if you're just trying to seem a certain way externally, internally, everybody knows what's really going on, right? And that's going to affect the people that work at the company. So it's easy to say, okay, let's publicize, for example, that we're starting a whole DI initiative, or let's put on our social media that we support X, Y, and Z. That's sort of, smoke and mirrors. And internally, I feel like you are creating another problem if you aren't authentic. Two problems. One problem is people are seeing that you're not being authentic. And the second now is that's not going to inspire anybody inside to be authentic.
but now you're making me mad, Kat, because I'm the DEI person in the organization, and you're telling me that the way in which you're looking at what I do is that I'm not authentic. I'm trying to make things happen. I'm trying to shake and bake. I mean, come on, how do you know what I'm doing?
I think that response is if someone is, trying to measure your outcomes, right? Where I think in this conversation, for me, speaking more specifically to what happens when you're in that kind of area of just trying to check the box, like you're not trying to really promote, sustainable change, or let's just do this quick little thing right over here, and then we're not going to talk about it ever again. So I don't think it's like a judgment on the effort. It's a judgment on, not even a judgment. It's more just trying to understand and observe what is the impact that you're looking for and what is the motivator, right? Getting down to what those really are, because I can't tell someone whether they're doing something well or not, or what's really motivating them, but the outcomes can, right? The choices that you make can.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, along with that, some of the indicators are going to be how much your team rallies behind you. Like a lot of mistakes that companies make, or that leadership of companies make, is that they move too quickly without gaining the credibility that's needed. Gaining that trust. Because when you're talking about change, and this is essentially what this is just change management. When you're talking about change, like it takes years to really move the needle towards the direction that you're even really trying to go in, and we're not just talking 2 or 3 years, talking 10 years, to really like enact a full plan and then see the results of it. And it's going to be some wavering. There's going to be some wins. There's going to be some losses, but like it takes time in order to gain that trust from your people to say, okay, like they're doing the things that are needed in order to really indicate to me that this is coming from an authentic place,
And what Aarin, really quick around trust, really, sorry, Reggie, but I think that's what it is. It's building that trust, right? Because then the amount of time it takes, of course, it could take years, it could take months, maybe shocking weeks, but it's that trust that's so important for people to buy in, right? Sorry, Reggie.
No, it's quite all right. I think what you're talking about is a plan versus an activity. So when we're doing activities, to be able to say, oh, okay, we had some listening sessions. Okay, we did a couple of assessments. Okay, but what happens is that from a trust perspective, the first question someone's going to say is, well, what did we do with that? We did the listening session. What was its purpose? Where did it go? So we did a couple of assessments, but we did that 5 years ago. We did assessments 5 years ago. So I've seen this. We've been here. We've done that.
Yeah.
And it does seem to me like we're just checking some boxes. And now what you've done internally is that you have not created advocates. Mm-hmm. Advocates that will go out and say, hey, this is a place to come work.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't created people who will say, I will give my discretionary time to this company because I see the commitment. I see that they're working toward it. No, they're not there, but that they have the vision and a plan for getting there. That's how, at least that's what you're making me think about, Aarin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's something I've specifically heard, being involved in different parts of the work, and projects that I'm involved in, like I'll speak to people, like I'll do a focus group and I'll listen to people whom, will tell me that they've done these before. They did one of these about 2 or 3 years ago. They didn't hear anything about it afterwards, right? So we're talking about that follow through. Like, are you all, not only are you doing the activities, not only are you doing the things that indicate that, you value the voices, from all different parts of the company so that you can make things better for everyone, but you're following through with that information that you get, and then you're communicating it. Like, the communication piece is huge. If you're doing things and you're doing things at a level in which, it's only getting to a small group of people, and they're taking that information, they're doing things behind the scenes, but nobody knows about it. Nobody's hearing the progress. Nobody's hearing about the small wins that, that were accumulated. Then they're not going to know. And they're going to lose faith in the fact that these things are being done for a reason with an ultimate goal in mind. It's a part of a plan, So that communication component is huge. You got to do those activities. You got to line them up. But you have to also follow through with things like, what did you take away from all this information that you've heard? And then how did you implement that moving forward?
See, that makes that really makes a lot of sense. You talked a little bit about leadership, and we've had some guests on before talking about leadership and their role in this. What do you see the role of leadership as it relates to this authenticity piece, this checking the box thing? How do you see leadership playing in here?
Yeah, simply for me, it's just walking the talk, to walk it out. Like they are the ones whom, carry so much weight and carry so much influence, and I'm always amazed when I speak to leaders and I hear from them that they're not, they don't fully understand like the weight of their actions, right? Just their presence, even their presence in a room has the ability to shift the dynamic, to shift the energy, and to influence how others interact there. So how leaders show up is just huge. And, I say, the dedication that you put towards this work shows when people aren't really watching you, right? It's the things that you're doing, when you go home or, when you're walking down the street, or you're interacting with someone, whatever, in a supermarket, a grocery store, pharmacy, whatever. Those are the things that indicate that you're personalizing this, because the journey doesn't just stop when you log off, or you close your laptop or you leave the office.
And the importance of that, when you were talking about how there's some leaders, right, who don't realize their impact or don't realize how it's so interesting, because most people are going to work better and harder for people that they respect, people that make them feel seen, people that they feel like are in line with, their thought process, and not just they agree with everything, but someone that, like, again, that they respect, they look up to, they may want to be one day, that kind of thing. And I'm always curious too. I wonder where those blind spots how they get created. Because I've heard that too, Aaron, honestly, even at other jobs I've had where leaders, will say something like, oh, I don't know why everybody acts so afraid of me, or like people say that I'm intimidating, or, don't really understand how they, how they are being processed by other people. But it's interesting because to me, it seems like that should be intuitive.
Yeah.
I understand it, though, is because a lot of times you're so removed from the day to day. And so it's really important, I think, that the leaders have this council of people that aren't just the top folks.
Right.
Because when you are just listening to the top folks, I believe they see what you see versus see what you miss. And so when you expand that group of people who you get counsel from, there's folks who just see things that you will never ever see because you're not on the manufacturing floor, so to speak. And I know every place is not a manufacturing floor. I'm just using that as an example. But I do understand it, Kat. I think that Aaron makes a really good point about the intentionality and making a real effort to get into a lot of those spaces, because people should not be just afraid of the boss. There should be times when you're like, oh, I could actually have a conversation with him and say some things, and hopefully they have a conversation. I love what you say, Aaron, in terms of when people are not looking, because people are always looking. But what you're saying, people are always looking. But it makes me think of, do you stop at the stop sign when nobody's there? If nobody's there, do you? It says stop. You're supposed to stop. Do you do that? So really, what you're saying to me is that when you think people aren't looking, what do you do? And I think that says a lot about who you are and how you come across. Obviously, that's my soliloquy for the day, so I appreciate that.
No, I truly do believe that, and I think just in taking a bit on what you were digging into, Kat, just about the why behind like how leaders show up. I think it takes a lot of mindfulness, to be a leader, because, and that honestly, that's what kind of draws that line between great leadership and just, people that are in positions, people just have titles, right? Like, I think, when you're a great leader, it's work, it's continuous work on like how you show up and like, putting back a feedback system into place, to constantly keep check on how you're showing up. What are some things I can do to improve? And when you open up though, like Reggie, you're talking about being on the manufacturing level, like when you open up feedback through all levels, through all channels, throughout your teams, then like people are going to tell you what's going on. Well, my plant manager told me that like there's some things going on the floor that make it a little bit unsafe. And so I've noticed like a bit of a drop in productivity because people aren't working as hard. They feel like their safety isn't taken into account. A great leader is going to have those channels open so that it gets to them so that they can make those decisions, but once that's in place, then, I believe you're not going to see that drop because that feedback is going to be so immediate that things are done. It's not to say that everything is going to, necessarily cater to, every single, request of an individual, but, you're going to get those high level concerns. You're going to get those high level comments about how people are doing, because you are disconnected from everything as a leader, but what are you doing to make sure that the channels are open enough so that you get the information? And then how do you act on that? So I think that's what makes a great leader.
And also capitalizing on, talking to people that are not like-minded, because, it could be very easy for a leader to want to go talk to someone that's going to validate what their thoughts and beliefs are. But to back to your point around a great leader is going to realize that is very, that's going to keep you very narrow, right? You're not going to be able to really impact or change for everybody because you're just getting validation on things that you already believe. It's the people that are different from you in different positions than you, thinking differently than you. They're going to help take the company and the business to the next level because they're your blind spots, right?
Yeah. And so we kind of started this discussion off talking about, checking the box, the authenticity, and then we rounded it out to really talk about leadership. And I think it's important how we connected the two here is that the leaders really set the example, that leaders really set the tone, that the leaders give permission for you to go beyond just checking the box. And more importantly, I think what I got from this discussion from you, Aarin, is that leaders set the vision. And that vision is more than just, oh yeah, I did that. It's more than checking the box. And so when I can understand the vision, because you talked about this whole thing about communication, is that tell me where you want us to go. Tell me what we are trying to do. I just love that because I think it has real impact as it relates to this whole idea of let's just check the box to make sure that the company is safe, that the company is protected, that we're doing the right thing, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think that, you hit the nail on the head with the vision. That vision is so key, and the vision is different from a checklist. It is like, the vision is going to tell you the purpose, it's going to give you a mission, it's going to give you, the reason behind, this is why, this journey is so important to us, it's going to outline the values, these are our values as a company. These are our core values. These are the things that we believe in. So it's going to set all of those things that, I think for a person that is a part of an organization where that vision has been set for them, it orients themselves to actually take a personal commitment into these things, rather than a box that's being checked, along with another series of boxes that have remained, that remain to be checked. It lacks the it lacks that energy. It lacks the momentum. It just seems like a series of things that are being done to say that they're doing them.
Yeah, and I think the importance too, Aarin, of differentiating between checking a box and a journey is also a journey is ever changing, right? Because things in the company change, expectations change. It's an ongoing thing. And so, of course, we're trying to set them up for change and inspire that, right? Inspire transformation. But it is really a journey because there's not a kind of one-stop shop, check the list, check the box, and everything's going to be good forever. It's an ongoing thing, and to be able to facilitate and give others and companies the tools to do that on an ongoing basis is what's most important.
Yeah, and that's so like that. I can't tell you how many projects I've been a part of that have, we got an SOW laid out. It's like, these are the things that we're going to do. We got all the work streams lined up, and there's a change in the organization to where it shifts what work, is necessary to reach the goal. So you're absolutely right. It's a fluid thing, nothing set in stone. And that's why I think, being flexible is one of our strengths as a company, to say, look, like we're here, we're utilizing you to let us know what's going on with your company so that we can shift and we can adjust as needed in order to meet the goals that we're trying to accomplish.
Aarin, thank you for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. I have to, since I am closing, I get the last comment, and that's a little bit rude to the guest, but because what I'm about to say, what I'm about to say is not gonna make Aarin happy. is that when we talk about leadership, if we look at numbers, a 23 in Chicago would mean that we're talking about Michael Jordan. But no, Aarin would put up Devin Hester. I understand Devin Hester was fantastic, but come on, man, put the other 23 up there. Hey,
look, that's That's what you call diversity of numbers, there, right? Like we want to give equal representation to 23. He was as impactful as some of the greatest in Chicago. That's my man right there.
I thought I had the last word on that, but I'm gonna let you do that. Hey, I'm Reggie Ponder. That's Catherine Potts, and that's Aarin Haney. We are here at Becoming Inclusive. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for joining us, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Becoming Inclusive is presented by the Kaleidoscope Group, your full-service diversity, equity, and inclusion partner serving clients worldwide. Learn more and continue the conversation at kgdiversity.com.